All right, we'll go ahead and get started then. Thanks very much for those joining us online for this community visioning workshop or kind of virtual event for the Crystal Lake and Pingree Road Station's strategic action plan. This is really kind of a key moment in the process where we're trying to drum up as much engagement as we can online with residents, with business owners, property owners, to provide some insight to us in the planning process about how we can really improve the areas surrounding Crystal Lake's two different metro stations. So we'll get started here. I'm going to start sharing a presentation. We've got a few folks that will also be jumping in as we go through to kind of take over and walk through some slides, but we'll get started here. So I'll share screen. All right, so hopefully, is that coming through on everyone's screen? Okay. So again, I'm Brandon Nolan. I am the project manager for this effort. Joining me also is Daniel Say, who is our associate planner too. Sorry, Daniel, that's working on this kind of hand in hand with me. And we are the consultant team that's been working with staff to develop this planning effort. So again, our agenda, just a quick team overview. What is the plan that we're actually pulling together? We're going to have a panel discussion where staff are going to be able to present some kind of key considerations as we go through the next steps in the planning process. Then we'll talk about kind of what is coming down the line. Daniel's going to give a walkthrough of map.social, which is a really cool and engaging online mapping application that is a kind of a key tool that we're trying to use to get community input on this, as well as a community survey. And then we're going to have any Q&A from those watching, so we can have kind of a lively, hopefully, conversation about what this process is and why it would be important to those residents and property owners and businesses that are tuning in. So just a quick overview of the team. House Levine is the firm that Daniel and I work with. We're urban planning, design, economics firm out of Chicago. Also joining with us is Fish Transportation Group. Cindy Fish is, I think, observing tonight, but they're helping us deal with the transportation related elements of the plan. Obviously a very important component given that we're talking about transit oriented development and kind of enhancing a station area. So House Levine, we're based in Chicago. We do work all throughout the country at a variety of scales, worked in over 400 communities, over 300 communities, doing over about 400 different planning studies. This slide is a lot of data. We work nationally, but we're based in Chicago, do a lot of work throughout the Midwest. And we really pride ourselves in trying to push the envelope in innovation and design work when it comes to urban planning. So real quick, what is the station's strategic action plan? Stations, because it is talking about two different stations, both the Crystal Lake or the downtown station, as well as the Pingree Road Metro Station. And our goal here is really to enhance these areas and kind of think about how we can encourage reinvestment, development, maximize use of these stations as transit assets and amenities, and really foster a welcoming environment for kind of all modes of transportation, but also look at land use and development. And we need to recognize that we're trying to enhance areas that are very different in nature, where you've got the downtown Crystal Lake area, and obviously the context there is, as you know, is a great, tremendous downtown where we're looking to identify some smaller areas we can improve and really help enhance what's already there. And then you've got Pingree Road Station area, which is more of a business park kind of environment. And obviously the strategies we come up with that station area need to be a little bit different than what we come up with for the downtown. So for context, we are focusing on the areas kind of in the blue circles here. So the station area for Pingree Road is a bit bigger. We're looking at about a half mile out from the station. And so that takes in the commercial areas along Northeast Highway, takes in some of the kind of unincorporated residential development elsewhere in McHenry County, and then the business park and some residential development within Crystal Lake. And then the Crystal Lake Metro Station, which is really focused on the quarter-mile surrounding station. So really the heart of the downtown, as well as some of the blocks that go a bit north of the tracks. So those two areas in blue for reference are what we're going to be really referring to tonight as the kind of study area for the project. So what is the station's strategic action plan? We're really trying to promote a community vision or establish a community vision for these station areas. So what are we trying to achieve here? We know with some respects that we're building on what's there, but what do we want to see change in the future? How do we attract potential investors and provide some fair certainty about what they can expect to be supported by the community down the line? And that in hand is going to encourage development, and then the plan will be able to kind of assist in review of proposed development. We're also providing a playbook of sorts for departments and partners to pull from, so we can align investments like infrastructure and capital needs improvements, changes in regulations and policy, so that at the end of the day, all of the levers that the city can pull to encourage development are there. And there's also an incentive and certainty on the private sector side to implement the plan recommendations. And then last but not least, because we are, again, talking about leveraging the metro stations for all they're worth, we really want to enhance accessibility to those as assets in the community. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Daniel, who's going to walk us through some existing conditions information.
Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, so we've conducted an existing conditions analysis of both study areas, the Crystal Lake Station as well as the Pingree Road Station. And really the intent here is kind of identify issues and opportunities in these both study areas, which gives us a baseline understanding. And with that understanding informs the planning and urban design and transportation recommendations as we head in the next phases of this planning process. So some of the analysis we conducted include identifying what is the current land use pattern here. So you can kind of see some of the graphics we've composed. In addition to land use, we consider what is the current regulatory framework, such as zoning districts, what is the current demographic and the market snapshot in the city as a whole, the two study areas, and in relation to the greater McHenry County. I think, Brandon, could you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, and additionally, we're working with Fish Transportation Group to identify issues and opportunities pertaining to transportation, traffic volumes, pedestrian and bicycle safety, where are the gaps in the sidewalk network. So this is an example of one of the analysis that we have for transportation, showing the concentration of pedestrian and bicycle roadway incidents in these two study areas. Next slide, please. And with all these analyses combined, I'm just going to kind of walk through the main high-level key takeaways from our existing conditions analysis. One is, recognizing that Crystal Lake and Pingree Road Station areas are distinctly different, both in their physical nature as well as the purpose. Crystal Lake being where the downtown area is, has a very diverse mix of businesses, a strong core where it's a strong destination, attracting people within the city and around from McHenry County. And on the other hand, Pingree Road Station area is mostly a business park with some residential components to the north side of the station. It's more of a suburban park and ride commuter facility. So one, you have Crystal Lake that is a bit more urban, and Pingree Road a bit more suburban in nature. So recognizing that is important. Knowing that the business park environment along Congress Parkway in the Pingree Road Station area, mostly currently consisting of light industrial uses, medical offices, a limited amount of multifamily, such as senior living facilities. Based on our analysis with the market and demographics, it's likely that character will remain in the foreseeable future. And kind of I hinted early on in our transportation analysis, we do see opportunities where we can fill in the gaps in our existing sidewalk networks to promote a more cohesive network, so then it's a safer environment for both pedestrian and bicyclists. Last but not least, we do see redevelopment opportunities, either in underutilized sites or greenfields in both the Crystal Lake and the Pingree Road Station areas. And we foresee they have their potential to make some positive and transformational changes to both station areas. That's kind of like the high key takeaways from the existing conditions analysis. Again, with these understanding, that'll help us inform our future planning and urban design transportation recommendations as we head into the next stages of the planning process. Back to you, Brandon.
Thanks, Daniel. And just to maybe underscore what's going to be produced for this planning effort, we really are trying to guide land use and development and transportation improvements. So the plan components are going to consist of kind of the same types of sections. So we're going to have a section of the plan that really talks about what is the vision for kind of future development here, and then how does that relate to improvements to the pedestrian realm? How does that relate to improvements to the transportation network? Housing and other types of development that are desired for these areas. What's the infrastructure that's going to be needed to make sure these can happen? And then last but not least, Daniel mentioned the redevelopment opportunities. As part of this process, we're also going to be developing some site concepts that show potential, kind of what's the capacity for some of these underutilized sites in the station areas to really accommodate development and really illustrate some of those higher level policies that we're trying to encourage. What does that look like at the site level? So with that said, we're going to pivot here to panel discussion of sorts. We're going to have some brief presentations from some city staff. So we've got Elizabeth Maxwell, who's joining us. She's the kind of lead planner we've been working with as a team here. We've got Heather Myrich, which is the economic development manager for the city. Mike Magnetson, which is director of public works, and then Katie Cowlin, who's the assistant city planner. So this is kind of a core team of staff that House of Levine and Fish Transportation Group are working with, and they're going to walk us through some presentations on some kind of key design principles and things that we need to be keeping in mind as we're going through the planning process, and also talk about some best practices that we're trying to encourage moving forward. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it off to Mike, who will be first in line here.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. You can flip the screen over to me.
You should just be able to share your screen at the bottom.
Yeah, it's saying host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh,
so that might be you, Liz.
Oh. Yeah, let me find you. Sorry. I apologize. All right, you should have all that functionality now.
Okay. All right. So everybody see my screen, hopefully? All right, so there's 4 principles of transit-oriented development: transit, density, walkability, and mixed use. So what do we mean by transit? It's just providing that access to transit to allow for a variety of mobility options, not just train, but also bus. Density is really key. Having a compact development, it increases safety. You have eyes on the streets. It connects people more easily. It also, from the city side, reduces infrastructure costs. Walkability, having sidewalks, crosswalks, access to transit, and site and building accessibility is really key. That's really where things kind of fall down out in the suburbs. And then having that mixed use, being able to have people move easily between residential, office, commercial, and institutional uses. So what are some of those elements? You really want it to make it convenient, safe, and comfortable. So what do we mean by that? Convenient for a pedestrian is, the ability to go out during work or to walk to work. You should feel that it's an easy trip. You should not have to feel like you've got to get dressed up for power walk, you know, in your spandex and Lycra, because it's going to be this arduous long walk. Safe, you know, and I mean safe, that comfortable feeling that you don't feel like, you know, you're going to be racing with traffic. You've got to have on, you know, all your bike gear and your helmets, but you should feel comfortable that if you're in your workwear, you can hop on a bike. It's an easy trip. You feel safe. You don't feel crowded by the motorists, and you can, you know, feel comfortable going to work or going to a meeting. And then finally, comfortable. This is where the suburbs tend to fall down. We have large setbacks, huge parking lots. You know, as a pedestrian, it sometimes feels arduous just going from the street to the front door. You don't want that. You want it to feel comfortable, a walk to go from your house to the store to the metro station, and not have to think, oh my gosh, I'm going to dread this. And particularly in our area, you know, everybody seems to forget winter when they do site design. So you don't want that long walk when it's January and 20 below. You want to be able to do that all year round, 12 months out of the year. So what are some of those best practices or amenities, particularly for bikes? You want to look at sheltered bike parking or access. The ideal situation should be here on the right is actually bike lockers inside. You can, if it's a multi-family apartment or condo building, having that amenity in the basement. Even if it's an office building, having that somewhere on the property where people can park their bikes inside out of the weather. If you can't do that, bike lockers or sheltered parking is really a key. What you want to avoid is the old style bike racks where you can't lock up both the front and the back wheel of your bike, and your bike is in there with tons of other bikes getting all scratched up and banged up. You want more of the hoop or loop type design. Making it comfortable, what do we mean by that? Is you should design your facilities so all ages, 8 to 80, in all types of dress, business wear, casual wear, feel comfortable utilizing your pedestrian amenities. You want them to feel safe on the sidewalk. Wider sidewalks, you want them buffered from traffic. You can do that a variety of ways. Having on-street parking is a great way to make pedestrians feel safe on a road. They're next to parked cars. They're not next to moving traffic. Adding landscaping, buffers. On the bike side, NACDO has a tremendous resource and guidelines, and you just don't want to throw a bike lane on a busy street and separate it with a little 4-inch white line. That's not going to make people feel safe. They're not going to feel comfortable. So you want to look at narrowing the vehicular lanes and providing buffered or protected bike lanes. I've got an example on the right is a buffered bike lane. So you actually are separating the bicyclists from the traffic by 3, 4, 5 feet. You also want to try and target lower volume, lower speed streets. With your bike routes and your designs through your development. You don't want to have them on a roadway that's 35 miles an hour or greater. People aren't going to use it. They're not going to feel safe. It's not going to feel comfortable. And then finally, what is really key and what is really lacking in the suburbs is having that continuous access, a connected transportation system. Too often we have sidewalks that just stop. There's gaps. You just see these worn dirt paths. Same thing for bike facilities. You may have a nice bike lane, but then it hits a larger collector street or a minor arterial, and there's nothing. People aren't going to use that. They're not going to feel safe or comfortable. And probably the biggest error we've made in the past out in the suburbs is the photo down on the right. A lot of the area developed, when the car was king, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and there's just this huge distance between the street and where you need to go. It's daunting for a pedestrian, it's daunting for a bicyclist. And as I mentioned again, with our climate, people aren't going to do this in the middle of the winter if they've got to walk, a quarter of a mile from the street just to get to the front door. You want that higher density development, keep the street close to the building. And that kind of leans into land use that Liz is going to talk about.
Liz, real quick, I just want to say for those watching online, if you do have questions, I forgot to mention this at the beginning, please use the chat function and drop those in the chat and we'll monitor that. So if you have questions as we're going through the slides, put them in there. We can answer them as we get to kind of breaks in our presentations.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, housing is a vital component to a strong community. You need to balance the density with design. Looking at the image on the right, you can see that the developer created a unique development with lots of open space for the residents. On the other hand, you know, an unimaginative developer can achieve the same density by plopping down a bland vinyl box. Let's see. It doesn't want to switch. Okay, there we go. Thanks. So depending on the different product types that are proposed by the developer and how they structure those units, the product type can yield a variety of densities. So the top corner, townhome development, which we frequently see in the suburbs, that can range between 14 to 29 dwelling units per acre, just depending on how wide they choose to make those units. Below that is a bungalow court. We don't really have this style of development near Crystal Lake, but that's a cluster of multi-story housing units around a central courtyard. And those can range anywhere between 17 and 33 dwelling units per acre. The multiplex, this appears to be a very large single-story or single-family residence. It's divided up internally to the structure, and it can range between 21 to 33 dwelling units. So if something like this were placed on a block of similar sized large single-family homes, besides noticing, you know, multiple doorways, it would fit in with the character of that neighborhood. The fourplex, again, would fit into the character of a single-family neighborhood. It's typically the same size as a single-family residence, just depending on how they, you know, divide the units up and the lot size. Those can range between 23 to 29 dwelling units to the acre. So you can get some significant density with using a product that can also blend in with the existing neighborhood. And seeing that there is a variety of density that you can achieve, this gives the developer additional flexibility when they're proposing projects. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, there. So density is important in order to achieve that balance that's needed to sustain those other uses. And those uses are retail and service providers. So your shopping centers, your deli, the grocery store, there are the schools, and then there are also the transit services. So PACE and Metra, they need to have a certain amount of customers in order to be able to provide that service. So through the TOD plan, we are going to encourage a variety of product types that blend with the character of the area and create a functional and livable community. A mix of product types, like this condo building and then these brownstones, can be integrated in a neighborhood design that has a bunch of product types, that has single family homes, that has townhomes, duplexes, detached and attached single family. So you can make things blend and be very cohesive and still get the density that you're looking for in order to provide that walkable and sustainable neighborhood. Next slide. The most likely development scenario for the next few years will be infill development. Infill development takes advantage of existing services, so water sewer infrastructure, police and fire stations, established sidewalk and roadway network, and access to transit. And because those services are already there, it's less costly to build. Frequently, infill development can also take advantage of mixed use principles. So the picture at the top left, they redeveloped this corner from a single story retail into multi-story, and they left the retail on the first floor and then put residential on the 2 stories above that. So they were able to provide services in the retail as well as some additional density with those housing units. So it's very good to be able to take advantage of some of these smaller pieces where you can be a little bit more creative with your design as well as providing for a mixed use. I'll turn it over to Heather.
Thanks, Liz. So development trends for creating a more walkable community. Some of those development elements of a TOD that we're going to be covering include uses that are drawn to a TOD area, the mixed use concept, and various amenities. Next slide. Who are we wanting to attract to the TOD areas? We're looking to, on the far left, you can see that we have the quick service. You want like grab and go, whether that be like a laundromat where it's a small retail space where you can drop off your dry cleaning, it's done somewhere else, and then you can come back and pick it up. Also, you have like little stands, so this is where you can pick up a quick bite to eat. You also have entertainment venues. Some of these would be like, if you have the ability to play bags, have a fire pit to sit and hang out, you have a theater, Pinstripes is an example where you can hang out, enjoy food, meet other people, and play bocce ball. You also have Kings, which is a small scale bowling alley that's really meant not for your hardcore bowler, but more for the entertainment aspect of doing an activity while being with others. Another one is cafes and restaurants. You really want to see them have outdoor dining spaces that are dedicated to being able to be out. And when you see more people around, it seems lively. People want to be there. They want to meet up with others. They want to spend time and hang out there. They'll go for a walk. They'll end up grabbing a cup of coffee, and then they'll have a place to sit down to either have breakfast or have a bite to eat or enjoy that coffee as well. Next slide. So what we'd like is high quality retail center in a mixed use concept. So there's a couple of places around in this area that have already accomplished that. One example is Des Plaines and another is Wheeling. Here on this slide, we're talking about Wheeling that was recently completed. And as you can see, this one's a great example because in the bottom left corner, you see that they have a metro station, and then they've added a residential housing component that has higher end amenities like a clubhouse, a pool, and then that actually is right at the end where then there's a giant plaza that the people either can take the train in, or if they reside within that residential space, they can walk and enjoy the plaza. They can also there's a movie theater there. There's a variety of restaurants along the corridor that have outdoor seating. And then at the other end, there's a variety of retail spaces. So these are a variety of examples of development amenities, many of which are within the surrounding area from Crystal Lake. So it's very obtainable for us to be able to implement these. In the top left, you have plazas. That's an example of the picture in the Wheeling Town Plaza. Also the amenities of having a bike station, having some outdoor seating and lighting. That's also where we talked about having some green space. You can have small bands come and entertain or just perform, and then people can kind of grab food and hang out. You also have you want open space that has aesthetic features, such as like a water fountain, or also you have landscape beautifications where you have a clock and then you have a very pretty landscape that makes you want to be in the space, spend time in the space, and come check it out. And back to you, Brandon.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so thanks for a great overview of kind of best practices for kind of stationary planning and some of the trends we're looking at. We're gonna just pivot real quick to see what questions we have in the chat, and then we'll talk about next steps. So I'm gonna stop share so some of the, our panelists can be on the screen as well. We had a question from Dennis. It says, has the city conducted any studies to determine the impact on single family housing values when adding higher density housing in the same areas? Does anyone in the city want to weigh in on that topic?
Sure. We have not conducted an independent study. We are doing a market analysis as part of this TOD plan. So we will have some of that information. But what we've found in the past is when you do develop an area, then property values tend to rise. If you have an undeveloped piece of property, it's assessed at a lower value. So when it is developed, regardless of if it's single family or if it's a multifamily development, that development just generates higher property tax values. And then usually property tax values in the area all increase along with that.
And just to add from a planning perspective, when we're talking about reinvestment in the station area, like by the downtown or Pingree Road, I mean, we're looking at really kind of greenfield opportunities where nothing's been developed, right? So there's going to be an opportunity to kind of introduce some strategies where we can make sure that any changes in density are done appropriately, and there's kind of a step down to where you've got your single family neighborhoods. So collectively, it's seen as an investment in the area, and it does have a positive impact on the community. In the downtown, it's a little bit different because it's much kind of tighter constraints. But as Liz said, we're really talking about investing in a downtown, and density is seen as a positive in that kind of market. So it really does kind of reflect well in the community. And for the downtown, we're not talking about kind of spreading out into the neighborhoods with dense housing. We're talking about reinvesting in some of the core areas of the downtown. So it's not going to be a drastic change from what's there now. It's talking about kind of more of a gradual shift, or looking at some sites that really are in the heart of the downtown that wouldn't impact single family areas. And then Vanessa just asked, what is the timeline for the study? So I'll take that one. We're basically looking at delivering this middle of next year. So we're going to be looking to get feedback from the community over the next kind of month or so at this stage in the game. We'll be drafting some material for the steering committee and others to review, and then it'll go back to the public next year. But we are about a third to halfway through the process as it stands right now. And that's actually kind of part of the next steps discussion. So, and then there's a question, will the presentation be available? Yes, we're gonna trim out some of the clever banter we had to start, and then we will post this to the project website. We can also make the presentation available as well, because we wanna make sure people can review what's being discussed here tonight and spread the word about the process. All right, so I will go back to share screen and go back to the presentation now. Okay. So in terms of next steps, we are going to review and summarize what we're hearing from folks. We're going to talk about a couple of those options for providing input here shortly. But really the next step after we give some time for the public to weigh in is drafting a vision statement and goals. So what's the high level vision we're trying to achieve for both station areas? And what are some supporting kind of goals or umbrella statements related to housing, related to economic development, related to transportation improvements that we want to see the plan support? We will then also draft a land use framework. So kind of building off what's already on the ground, what do we want to see happen from a land use and development perspective in terms of intensity of development, character, what types of development, and then the supporting transportation and framework and market analysis that goes with that to support the recommendations. And last but not least, I did mention earlier the concept models. So we're going to look at a few key redevelopment opportunities within the station areas and kind of suggest what could go there based on the recommendations of the plan. So kind of show kind of what's the capacity of these sites to actually accommodate development, and then how should that development be informed by those the vision and those goals that I mentioned. The project website, you can get through to this through the city's main page, but if you want to go directly to it, it's through our website, hlplanning.com/portals/Crystal Lake. And that gives you access to notices about meetings, a community questionnaire, and map.social, which Daniel's going to walk through in a minute here. Actually, he's going to walk through it right now. So I'm going to stop screen share and let Daniel take over. But he's going to give you a quick demo about how to use this kind of fun and engaging tool to create a map for both station areas and tell us what you want to see there. So I'll stop share and give it over to Daniel.
Brandon, is my screen showing?
Sure is.
All right, awesome. All right, so here's, if you go to map.social/Crystal Lake, it brings you to this page, which is the page, map.social page we created for this project. Here is the kind of like the home page. If you scroll down, we have some instructions, tutorials on the help button on the top right corner. If you do need a walkthrough. As you continue to scroll down, we have like a dashboard. It's kind of showing you how many people have given their input for the map.social maps, what we're mapping, some of the categories we're thinking about, but there's also the other ones. So you can, there's flexibility in typing categories that aren't covered by those there right now. You can see here a kind of a word cloud just to summarize what of the comments we have received so far. So as more input as we receive over time, this word cloud will get updated. So if you're a new user to map.social, the first time creating your map is click creating your map. And then it will bring you to this sign in page. You do need to create an account to access map.social. It's purely for the sake of keeping track of how many people are accessing map.social. You can link your Facebook and Google accounts to your map.social account. And like most other sign-in services right now, you need to verify your email address. So once you have that set up, you can log in. And this is kind of like the home page you'll see. It will be blank initially. This is a test map I've created initially. And you can go click the button, create new map. And over there, that's where you can type your title, lake, and then press create. And then that brings you to the interactive mapping part. So I'm going to minimize the screen here. All right, there you go. So on the left, you see the plus and minus sign that where you can zoom in and zoom out. The initial view here is to show both the Crystal Lake and the Pingree Road Station areas. And let's just say I want to start putting some dots to indicate community assets in the Crystal Lake Station area. You can go to the bookmark here, and these two bookmarks lets you quickly toggle between which station area you'd like to focus. So I'll go to Crystal Lake Station here. It will zoom into this area, and clicking back to legend, and these are kind of like the categories that we can put dots on the map. You can either click the plus sign, the black plus sign over here, or just where your cursor is, click on the map, and a pop-up window will appear on what categories would you like to add. So I'm going to add a community asset to indicate Crystal Lake Metro Station. And here you can type your title, your description, a link to an external page if you like to show pertinent information that's related to another web page. You can also upload photos from your camera or from your mobile device. Map.social is created to be mobile friendly. So once you press the upload photos, it will direct you to your mobile cell phone's camera function. So let's just say here Metro Station and test. And by clicking submit, I already have a dot here. I'm going to go through later on where you can thumbs up and thumbs down the part later on. Over here, edit, you can make any changes if needed. And if you change your mind, you can press delete to delete that dot. So it's a really simple and intuitive way to provide your feedback on a virtual platform. If you go to if you go to Map Gallery here, you have the, there's also, the Map Gallery allows you to see a composite map that shows all the input from all the participants have shown. That gives you kind of idea what community residents are thinking about so far. So you go to click map, and this is what you see, an aggregate total of the dots you see here. And some of them are public safety concerns, some are problematic intersections, some are community assets. So you can go through, zoom in and click one of them. And this is another user typing their description and their issues. And if you look through it and say, you know, this resonates with you and you agree with it, you can click thumbs up, or if you disagree and thinks otherwise, you can press thumbs down. You don't really, the map is live, so once you add or remove a dot, it's automatically saved, so you don't need to worry about like making sure your work is safe. It's automatically safe with every action you've taken. So hopefully this quick demo kind of shows you that map.social is, you know, an intuitive, interactive, fun, and more importantly, a safe way, given with the pandemic, to provide your feedback on a spatial manner for the Crystal Lake and Pingree Road station areas. Brandon, is there anything you would like to add?
No, if you want to hand it back to me, I'll keep sharing here. There we go. So thanks again, Daniel. Yeah, I mean, we really want to push map.social as kind of our go-to tool for trying to get some feedback on this planning process. It really does give us kind of place-based input about what you guys want to see in these two station areas. So if you can do anything for us in the next month or so here, it's visiting map.social/Crystal Lake and creating a map. And so if you're watching and participating online, please jot that down. We'll make sure this gets posted to the website. I mean, it is available through the website right now as a tool, but we'll make sure the presentation gets posted as well if you have any questions about how to actually use the tool. And I see a couple of things being posted in the chat, so we'll get to those in a minute after we get through this next section of the presentation. Another way to provide your input is through community survey. This link's really less intuitive, so I wouldn't bother trying to write it down, but this is the kind of direct link to the survey. Easiest way to get to it is going through the main page of the project website. But it gives you a quick overview of the process, and it's about a 10-minute survey to complete. And again, it's really another key mechanism we're looking to get input about some of the things that were presented tonight about what kind of development you want to see, what kind of development you don't want to see, some concerns or aspirations for the two planning areas. And with that, we will turn it over to kind of Q&A. So I'll stop share again. And it looks like we've got a couple of things that have come through the chat. First question is, what is the best way to get these pedestrian amenities / connections on existing sites, not just the ones that will be developed in the future? Mike, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that as a public works guy, or if you want me to help out. But
you know, definitely you could do it through this process. You know, the maps.social there. The other option is, you know, feel free to go on our webpage and email myself. We do look at, particularly with the sidewalk gaps, that's something we're actually looking at now. So, you know, feel free to drop an email or comment through this process, and we'll take a look at that.
Yeah, and I guess on a broader level, just looking at kind of the recommendations that come out of this plan for improvements, we are going to be looking at kind of how we can repurpose the right of way that exists to help provide pedestrian and bike infrastructure. We know there's certain parts of like roadways that are going through the Pingree Road station, for example, where sidewalks are missing, there's other gaps, or they're narrow, or there's not right crossings. And, you know, is there a way we can re-envision some of those cross sections, for example? So we are going to be looking holistically at the station areas to try to prioritize corridors for pedestrian and bike improvements. It is going to have to happen piecemeal, though. It's rare that you get a chance to overhaul an entire district at once. So some of it's going to happen as the redevelopment occurs. Other improvements are going to happen as grants become available to fund for some of these improvements. So it will take time, but the idea is that we are going to identify some realistic, achievable ways of implementing some of these strategies that we talked about. And Cindy's listening in, but if she wants to add anything, she's welcome to. Cindy Fish is our transportation consultant.
Hey, Brandon. Yeah, what you said is correct. That there are many of these pedestrian and bicycle improvements actually don't require additional space. It's just a reallocation, or making it's a balancing of the demand and kind of making those choices. But looking at filling in sidewalk gaps, trade-off between, say, on-street parking or protected bike lanes. That's a choice. But adding things like curb extensions, curb bump outs, mid-block crossings, bike parking, none of those require additional space, additional right-of-way. So it's just, again, looking, like you said, looking at some more of an incremental approach, looking at funding and those types of options, but they're all doable.
Thanks, Cindy. And a follow-up question was, given the current pandemic, how do we see the mix of uses changing to meet the evolving needs of residents, employees, visitors? None of us have a crystal ball about what this really means long-term for land use and development. There's speculation about shifts in the office market and what that means for how people are using space. There's speculation about shifts in the retail landscape and kind of accelerating maybe some trends that were already happening in terms of kind of reducing the amount of retail space that really is needed long term. With that said, the downtown in particular is still doing really well. When we were doing reconnaissance and looking at inventory on the ground, downtown Crystal Lake is doing phenomenal right now in terms of vacancies, in terms of activity. Just visiting during a weekday, pleasantly surprised to see how much activity is happening. So the downtown is kind of benefited from great strategic investment on the city's part. And we're looking to try to keep leveraging that momentum. Pingree Road's gonna be a little bit different because it doesn't function like a downtown. So we need to think about the use of that space a bit different. But there's definitely demand for housing. There's definitely demand for some of these uses we're looking at. And when we talk about a mixed use building, for example, we're not gonna be getting down to the level of saying, you need to have X amount of space dedicated to office spaces. You need to have X amount of space dedicated to retail. It's really providing kind of the vanilla box, as they call it, so that the market can dictate how some of those buildings are used. But long term, I think really the main thing we're trying to achieve is defining what is the vision, what are the mix of uses we want to see happen. Maybe the degree and the mix of what those uses are shifts because of market demand, but overall, we're still trying to achieve a certain vision for some of these areas. I don't know if staff want to add to that response, but okay. And there's a follow-up question as well. How much land is available, quote unquote, to make changes in the downtown station area? It seems pretty full already. Is there anything that can be shared about average station utilization now and pre-pandemic? So that's kind of a two-parter. In terms of land available, the areas we're looking at, I think in the Pingree Road station area, we are talking about undeveloped areas, right? They're pretty much ready and waiting for development for the most part in the Pingree Road station area. In the downtown, it's a bit more strategic. There are some vacant sites available. There are underutilized sites, and by underutilized, I mean sites that maybe they have a certain use on them, but it involves a lot of outdoor storage, it involves a lot of parking, it involves a lot of maybe inefficient use of the site. So you've got parking for multiple users and access drives and things that slice and dice land that really could be consolidated and used differently. So in the downtown, we're definitely looking at kind of strategic response and trying to figure out what areas are available that realistically could be repositioned with willing property owners. So we're talking about kind of providing for opportunities in the downtown along with the property owners, because there's always a question about who's actually doing this. And the answer is we're trying to create kind of a fertile environment for private development to take hold. So we're not talking about the city taking things over and making sure this happens. It's about kind of a coordination with players. But a backside to that question is kind of the parking use. And again, Cindy, I'll put you on the spot, but I don't know if you have anything in general to share about the parking utilization. I know in general, obviously parking use has gone down, but long-term, we still need to recognize that transit is going to be a vital player in the station area. So we do need parking for Metro, but that mix might shift a bit, is my, I guess, initial statement.
Right, and I mean, when it comes to parking, it really is for the community to determine, you know, what is the strategic role of parking in their downtown. And you know, in communities that have metro stations, there's certainly the opportunity for shared parking for, you know, evenings and weekends. Right now, we know that in both station areas, actually, that the parking is underutilized. Even kind of pre-COVID, the downtown station, I think, was about 2/3 full, and Pingree is, I think, about 70%. So there is some opportunity to kind of rethink how much parking, you know, how much land do you want to dedicate to parking? What is the role of parking as a mixed use within the station area?
Thanks again, Cindy. And then looks like one more question in the chat was, when will you know how much all this development will cost and the impact on property taxes? Liz, I don't know if you want to weigh in that discussion, or Katie, but.
Sure, yeah. And I think, Brandon, you mentioned this just a few minutes ago. Development is done by private developers, so no costs are incurred by the city. In fact, on residential developments, we collect impact fees. So those impact fees help offset costs for police and fire services, school, library, things like that. So there wouldn't be any kind of cost, at least not for the residents, the existing residents of the city, or, you know, general funds are not used for construction, things like that. It's all private. And property taxes, you know, those are set by the assessor's office. So depending on what township you're in, they have a formula that sets what that property tax rate is, and that's how those taxes are calculated. So you can certainly, you know, talk to the assessor a bit more on that. But again, if it's a desirable area to live, like Crystal Lake is, you know, we have some of the lowest property taxes around from the surrounding communities. So I mean, we're very fortunate on that. But you know, more people want to move into this area because it is very desirable, and we do have 2 metro stations. So you know, pre-COVID, when people were you know, traveling downtown for work, or, you know, to the west suburbs, you know, that was very convenient for them to be able to live out here, possibly have like a larger property or a single family detached house, and then still be able to work in the city. So, you know, we hope that this plan is going to set that framework. So when we are talking to the developers, we have what that vision is, and so that we can get that high quality development.
Thanks, Liz. All right, I'm not seeing any other chats come through. Did we get any other questions through other avenues? Okay. So with that, I don't, Liz, I mean, is there any parting words from you on this event?
Yeah, I mean, thank you to everyone who's participating and you know, helped put this together. This presentation, we will get it up on the website, so it will be available if anybody wants to watch the playback. And then throughout this whole process, if anybody has questions or comments, there is that contact information on the city's webpage, as well as, which links it to the House of Levine website that was set up for this project. So you can do the customer comment or feedback and get in touch with us. So if you have any additional questions or something comes up later, you know, feel free to reach out to us, and we can certainly answer those.
Yeah, and I think I'll just echo, thank you again for everyone who kind of listened in tonight. We are trying to make this kind of opening the opportunity for everyone to provide input in this process, because it really is important for the city to make sure that what we're proposing has some backing and support of the community. So we're going to make sure the map.social and the survey are available for the foreseeable future. Take comment where we can. And then, as you said, the next step is drafting the plan based on everything we heard and everything we've learned. As you've seen, we've done a lot of research already. The plan is not like a foregone conclusion. We are working through this process. And the next step after we draft the plan would then be input again. So this isn't the last chance to weigh in on the process through these surveys. We want to make sure that whatever we put together is vetted by the community on the back end as well. So we're working at the great steering committee right now with representatives from PACE and Metra and local business owners and property owners and bike advocates, kind of a whole gamut of folks that are helping us kind of review things as we go. Once they bless things next year, then it gets go back to the public, and then we'll review it at a public meeting as well. So thank you again for your time. And unless anyone else has anything to add, I think we'll wrap up our meeting. All right. Thanks very much, everyone. I appreciate it.